Hey everybody, it's the Mad Master here. I'm doing another video, and this time it's going to be a new segment I'm probably going to be doing as much as I can, and that is most underrated musicians. Beginning with just a little disclaimer, I don't think this band is necessarily underrated, and not all these bands are going to be underrated, but in the grand scheme of things, some of these musicians are underrated for sure. And the first one I'm going to do is a drummer who I've enjoyed for a long time. That's Thomen the Omen, Stauch or Stauch, whatever, however you pronounce it. I'm not a German expert, unfortunately. So I first got into Blind Guardian when I ordered this very album from an import company in February of 1998. It was about, this is like the original version. You see the Virgin Records thing. It was, what does it say? 1991. It came out in 1990. But yeah, the I thought it was 1990. Anyways, a little Mandela effect going on there. I thought it came out in 1990. So the it was the first Blind Guardian album I heard, and I had not heard him. It was a totally like blind, pun unintended, purchase or deaf purchase, whatever you want to call it. I put it on, and there were two things that stood out for me immediately. Well, three things: the vocals, the riff, and the drums. The drums were like nothing I'd heard before because it was like, it was like speed metal, but it had this extra oomph to it, this extra, dare I say, melodic touch to the drum playing, which immediately was part of the appeal for me. And I bought more of their albums, like Imaginations from the Other Side hadn't come out. I think it came out that spring summer, and I bought it when it came out as an import because that was kind of what I had to do back then because there was no there was an internet, but there weren't any WMA sites that you could get Blind Guardian albums from that sounded like fucking 4-bit or whatever it was. So I bought all their albums that were out at the time and enjoyed the fuck out of them. And I think he's an underrated drummer. I've been on his channel quite a bit. I think it's called Thomen's Drum Chamber. And the thing about him is I don't think he gets the credit he deserves because he has this style that there's only a couple of people that have played power metal, quote unquote, that have even come close, and that's the drummer of X Japan, Yoshiki. The only one that I can think can come close as far as power metal goes. Ulai Kush from Halloween and Masterplan has some good stuff too, but Thomen the Omen just has this originality, this style, and especially watching the channel, watching him play all these old Blind Guardian songs, I really found out that I got educated because I was like, of course I've always liked him and played air drums even to his music, to his drums, but I didn't know it was that intricate, until I watched a lot of the drum videos, like Imaginations from the Other Side, Nightfall and Middle Earth, and Night at the Opera, particularly. Have Night at the Opera is my least favorite of the three, but still, like the intricacy of the drums are just fantastic on a whole other level of drumming for that style. If you listen to most power metal bands, it's just like this. They play the 16th notes. You do the fast drum thing and all that. It's just like, but he has just this finesse and this expressiveness. There's always all sorts of fills and all sorts of parts, and even like watching Journey Through the Dark, like some of the stuff with that, I was just blown away. I think he's an underrated drummer because you hear about the Gene Hoglands and the Dave Lombardos and Mike Portnoy's of the world. You don't hear about Thomen the Omen, but I think he's up there. I think I think it's because power metal is not as much of in some ways it's not as respected as speed or thrash metal or progressive metal as far as musicality and quality of music. That's too bad because ostensibly power metal is kind of in between the thrash metals and the prog metals as far as complexity and virtuosity and stuff. So that's a sad thing. I don't know why he doesn't get as much credit. Um, by the way, he does play some Metallica and Slayer songs on his channel. I'd suggest watching that, especially the Slayer one. I was like, yeah, it makes sense that he was influenced by Dave Lombardo. And even years ago, like the last 10 years or so, I've always called him the Dave Lombardo of power metal. That's what I've referred to him as. And the funny thing is that there's a lot of debate about modern Blind Guardian versus Thomen era Blind Guardian, which is to me is a thing. To me, that's the defining point. Those there's a cutoff point after he left. Because Twist in the Myth wasn't that great of an album. At the Edge of Time, I thought was fantastic for later Blind Guardian. The rest of them have kind of left me dry to some extent. In all honesty, I still think they're a better band than most of the other power metal bands put together, even their mediocre albums. I didn't like the orchestral album as much as I thought I would either, which sucks. But it is what it is. But Thomen the Omen had this magic. He had this finesse, and it's definitely missing. And I think it's almost like when Scorpions got, when Willie John Roth left Scorpions and they replaced him with Matthias Jabs, or however you pronounce that. Or even when Judas Priest got rid of Les Binks and got Tom Holland, or Dave Holland, excuse me, Dave Holland. Not Tom Holland, the actor, Dave Holland. It's kind of similar. It's like, why, get rid of someone more complicated to get someone more refined and simple? And I think Dave Holland was a better drummer than people give credit for, because he was in Trapeze, which had way more virtuosity than Judas Priest did. Live, he did pretty well with Priest if you listen to some of those live shows and albums from the early 80s at least, and then something happened late 80s, but I don't know what it was with him. But I think it's comparable as far as the newer drummer of Blind Guardian. Now, at the same time, I think part of that is maybe related to just the way that they produce albums nowadays and the way they write songs, because there's a lot of things about older Blind Guardian that's missing from modern Blind Guardian. Like, for example, a really thick, defined rhythm guitar element and riffs that are really identifiable. I mean, you listen to Traveler in Time. Oh, there's a crack on that. It was really old CD. It is a really old CD. I have like 2 or 3 other versions of this, by the way. This is the original one that I bought. You listen to Traveler in Time, there's like this thick, heavy riff. You listen to stuff off Night of the Opera onwards, and it's smothered in leads, like 15,000 different guitar harmonies. You could sort of hear the rhythm guitar underneath it all, but you used to be able to hear that. The only album came close was At the Edge of Time. And just the way that they do things with Charlie Bauerfeind, I just think it's kind of like they've gotten really safe and really stuck in a rut with regards to the way that they produce albums, and it sounds very synthetic. I'll give you a case in point. Listen to Nightfall and Middle Earth, and tell me you don't hear there's woodwind instruments, there's natural sounding acoustic guitars, there's flute, there's Gregorian chants, or not Gregorian chants, but sort of a way like the Elder, like some of the way that Hansi Kirsch recorded his vocals sounded like it was probably done in an actual hall to achieve that. Now you listen to some of their modern albums, it sounds like there's like drum machine kind of triggered parts with chronization, like just really synthetic sounding stuff. And I'm all for synthetics in music, even metal. It has its place, but the way that Blind Guardian has kind of made that really mechanical sounding compared to the way they're supposed to sound, which is medieval, Renaissance kind of sound. The way that they're doing this now, it doesn't have that same feeling that like Nightfall and Middle Earth, or any albums before that had with regards to the natural sounding stuff that they did. A lot of acoustic guitars, just more. I mean, I think there's more clean electric guitars on Modern Blind Guardian than are actually acoustic guitars, which is fucking ridiculous. You know, I mean, it's I don't know what it is with the production, and I think that's part of the reason why the drums you know aren't as expressive. It's just this very clean kind of way, this very standardized kind of production that Bauer Fiend and the band do nowadays, and that's my major complaint about Blind Guardian nowadays. And I remember Thomen the Omen's interviews around the time the Savage Circus came out. He wanted to play, he didn't want to play what Blind Guardian was kind of getting into, but I'm not, don't quote me on this, but I swear there were some of those complaints with some of the more modern production that they were getting into with him. But I don't recall the exact interview, or if this is actually something that isn't a false memory, but I believe that's the case. So yeah, I'd recommend checking out his channel. Totally underrated musician in regards to the genre that we're talking about, which is metal. And I wish I want to hear him do more stuff. I want him, to play more projects. And he's just a fantastic drummer. Just has such a unique style. I mean, I could tell from. I'm not even a drummer. That was before I even played with like a lot of bands or anything. I had played with my brother, who was a drummer, rest in peace. But I hadn't played with a lot of drummers. I played like with one or two other ones actually. But I hadn't. There was one that actually I'd played with three or four drummers. I'm trying to remember. My bass player in my former band was also a drummer for a while too. Forgot about that. But yeah, Thomen the Omen, totally underrated musician in regards to metal. We hear about all these drummers and all these fucking guys, but he's awesome. I think he could probably get away with playing a lot of odd timings and even blast beats if he learned them. I think he's good enough to hold his own if he learns some of that stuff. So that's about all.